is a care coordinator of Mid-South Home Helpers, and she comes today with her inspiring and tenacious story. We love her, and we're so happy that she's agreed to share.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me here today. I'm really honored. And so Mary Lou gave you the little brief intro on me. And I grew up in a family that moved around a lot. My dad was with the railroad, and then my husband and I got married, and he was with the airline business. So we moved around a lot then. But before we got married, I did go into nursing school, and before I went into nursing school, I wanted to make sure I knew what I was getting into. So I worked for 3 months at a nursing home before I went into nursing school. So my initial education on how to take care of people came from what we know now as certified nurse assistants, and that's what I was. I learned the really most, I think, precious part of what we as caregivers get to give to people is the hands-on, learning how to comfort, learning how to keep people clean, keep them fed, and help them keep some form of respect no matter what age they are, and also appreciate the privilege of getting to be a part of that time. So I did go on into nursing, and I have experience in orthopedics, med-surg, trauma, cardiac care, vascular surgery, research, and then finally as a nurse practitioner. So we did move here from Dallas, and at some point in our marriage, my husband said to me, well, honey, you've lived outside of Texas more than you've lived in Texas. So doesn't that make you a Yankee? And I said, well, no, that really makes me a missionary. And so that is kind of how I view myself. I'm not a native Memphian, but I have grown to really love and appreciate the South, and we've enjoyed raising our family here. So a little bit about my love of horses. I first started riding, I think it was about 3, and the first animal that I believe I sat on was some of you may not know what this is, but it's a Brahma is a type of a cow. So I actually first rode on a Brahma heifer named Billy Joe, and then on my uncle's dairy farm. And then after that, I would get on anything basically that had 4 legs and looked like it could support my weight. I don't know why, I was just always drawn to that. So I rode ponies all over the place. I rode as often as I could. Finally, I broke my parents down in high school, and they finally got us some horses. So over my adult life, I would ride whenever I could. That was really my passion. And after my breast cancer treatment, we were in a situation where I was able to get back into the horseback riding scene. And believe it or not, there are a whole bunch of people out there over 50 that are mostly women, and all they do is haul their horses all over the Mid-South and go horse camping and ride. And so that's what I was doing and enjoying back in the mid and early 2000s. I had ironically gotten a new horse in the spring of 2011 because I felt like my previous horse was dangerous. So it was a very, very sunny, beautiful day in September, and I was working this horse in the ring and just doing normal, what we call groundwork. So I got on him and was riding around the ring, working on some transitions. And the last thing I remember of that ride was feeling a little out of balance in my saddle. And the next memory I have is being on my back, looking up at the sky, and on the other side of the fence. And I could see the horse had run away and was near the gate. So no one saw what happened. I still don't know exactly what happened. I'm kind of glad I don't, but I called for help, and patiently and finally someone came. And thus began my my journey in recovery. It began the minute that I had that accident. And to some extent, looking back, it really began my new profession, which was being my own advocate and running the business, which is taking care of Barbara Moore. So being a good nurse, I gave the EMTs all of my medical history, all of my meds, all my contacts, very calmly. I was the calmest person there that day. And I do remember seeing the helicopter rotors going, and then I remember being in the med and seeing my family. I was at the med for about 10 days, and I did remember hearing my diagnosis. And what I did was I had broken my neck in 2 different spots. I had crushed a vertebra, and then the vertebra below that also was damaged. And what you may not know about spinal cord injuries is that, you know, when you hear people say, oh, they broke their neck, it doesn't mean they literally just cut their spinal cord right in two. Your spinal cord is actually about the consistency of a banana. And rarely does someone actually just cut right through it. So I had pressure on parts of it and bone embedded in it, which the surgeons removed, and they fused my neck, and I now had a diagnosis of quadriplegia, which you cannot see, but you can there, is the back of my power wheelchair that I use. So I had now a diagnosis of quadriplegia. That first time in the hospital, I could only move one toe and my arms to some extent. I could not breathe on my own, and eventually they had to take the tube out of my mouth and give me a breathing tube right here in my neck, which is called the tracheostomy. So I don't have much memory of that first 10 days, but I did have a great advocate in my family and my husband, John, who began the tremendous work of figuring out how to get me from the med to the Shepherd Center, which is a spinal cord rehabilitation specialty hospital in Atlanta. And against the wishes of the med, I was flown in an air ambulance to Atlanta 10 days after I arrived at the med. So I arrived at the Shepherd Center, ventilator dependent with pneumonia. And I could spend so much time on just being at the Shepherd Center, so I'm really going to just gloss over it so that I can get to more of what we all came here for, which is my perspective. When I got there, I had minimal use of my hands. I couldn't feed myself. Once I was there, I was able to get weaned off the ventilator, and I learned to brush my teeth, to feed myself, some stretching. I learned what it was going to take care of me. I also began to experience what it was like to be on the recipient end of receiving care, which I did not like at all. And I still have some issues with that. My sons will tell you it's very hard for me to ask for help. And the people that work with me in the office know that too. I had caregivers in the hospital that were great, and they knew what they were doing, but they did not understand that because I lived there for 3 months, that my room became that was like my apartment. So I had to learn to advocate on how I wanted it. If you've ever been in a hospital room, you will probably know that it can look like a complete disaster zone. You might be fine in your bed, but this stuff is just scattered everywhere. And unless you learn to speak up for yourself, in my case, my environment is very important to me. I had to learn that, Barbara, you've got to speak up. People just do not read your mind. On the other hand, I had a caregiver that for lack of a better word, she completely depressed me. I hated the days that she was there. I don't know why I never advocated for myself and refused to have her. It was just an emotional abuse thing to me. And so I felt as though if I said anything, that there would be some kind of retribution on her part, or the word would get out that I was a complainer. And so I made the conscious decision to not say anything. And I think that's an interesting thing to remember when, as a business person now working with clients, it may be hard for some people to come out and complain or request somebody different just because they don't want to be labeled and they don't know that they have the right to do that. So retrospectively, I wished I had spoken up more. I did write a letter to the director of nursing after that, after I left, with recommendations for everyone that had taken care of me, and there was only the one caregiver that I blasted, so to speak. I would say 95% of everybody else was great. So in the hospital, although I think Shepherd Center does an outstanding job, more so than other places, the minute you arrive, it's the caseworkers immediately start evaluating you for discharge, or your social worker. It can be a nurse or a social worker, no matter where you're at. And they, at the Shepherd Center, worked really hard to help me understand, and my family, particularly my husband, how much care I was going to need at home. However, the patient in me had a hard time accepting that I was going to need help in my home because I was in denial and I did not want that to be a part of my life. It was something that we all understood, but I think everyone, even at that time, knew that as a nurse that I would take care of it. The problem was the person who was also a nurse just really didn't want that to be. So I can't understand families when they go home that they don't necessarily foresee and understand what they're going to need until they're actually in the situation. My husband had a very high level, very visible job at the time. We have no families. I mean, no family other than my sons in the area. So we were basically on our own. So I did prep from the hospital. I ordered extra towels. I knew we were going to need gloves. I ordered wipes, pads, lotions. I reached out to some friends and my husband did, and we had a ramp built. We enlisted the help of our church, who brought us food. They actually did that for 2 years. The OT did a great job of making sure that I had equipment here at home. I had a bathroom chair, which is not covered by any insurance. I had a Hoyer lift, which is something that helps people get in and out of bed, or a chair. And I had a manual wheelchair to cover me in case this guy broke. And then the magical day of discharge came, and this happens all over the world. The day you have discharge written on your chart, it's very common for the healthcare industry to look at you as you are independent. So my poor husband had no help that day. He got me ready, got everything packed, and got me out of there. So we came home on, I think it was December the 22nd, and he did nearly all of my care until the 2nd of January with help from our sons. And I think we might have had one friend come in town. Once we got home, as reality began to sink in and seeing the amount of work that this was taking a toll on my husband, I knew I was going to have to finally reach out and call agencies. At this time, the reality of how much my care was going to cost was just sinking in, and it was really overwhelming. I was told at the Shepherd Center that the average initial first-year cost for someone with a spinal cord injury is $100,000, and out of pocket. And I can easily say that we did spend that, and I'm fortunate that we at the time had some resources and had friends that had a fundraiser for me, which was a huge blessing. When I called agencies, I called around, and I was so shocked at the cost and the fact that we were going to have to bear this. I was could not qualify for disability, and no insurance covers private in-home care unless you have long-term care insurance, which I could tell you in the business I'm in, I highly recommend. I did get caregivers from an agency, and I remember my husband's reaction when they showed up at the door. The agency guaranteed that someone could be there the day after New Year's, and his face said it all. He was like, "Thank God someone's here." And I understood that, but when I saw this young woman look at me, I realized she has no idea how to take care of me. And I got that reaction from most of the people that came in, despite having been guaranteed by the companies that they could send people that were completely qualified. What I observed was people entered the room shy, no eye contact. They were all good people, but socially awkward in our home, around our family. The sweetest one I remember, she was so cute because I would impress upon her how much reliability was necessary for us because of my husband's job. And she was very transparent that day. She said, I just want you to know that if reliability is an issue for sure for you, that I am not reliable. And, you know, we laugh about it now, but it was like, great, I'm really glad you told me that, because this is not going to work. So I had several caregivers. The agency sent many, many different ones. I began to feel very tired, very irritated, very resentful that I could not have somebody just come in and look at me and know how to take care of me. At some point in that process, it dawned on me that I'm responsible for myself. Look, can you still see me?
Yes, yes.
And so I had to become more active and be less of a victim in this situation. And so I took it upon myself to educate these people. I took the time to get my anatomy books out, to show people what I needed, to explain to them in detail how to take care of me. I found that once I educated them more and they had more information, that they were more likely to be able to meet my needs. And so we began to work as a team. And over time, I needed less care. I had started out with 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, and now I just need help 2 hours a day for 4 or 5 days, 2 to 4 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week. I have someone that's been with me for 7 years, but it took a lot of work on my part to finally step out of the role of, step out of the position of victim into being informational and trying to create a partnership. So I've had a lot of successes. I drive. I did get back on horseback. I was able to walk down the aisle with my boys when my youngest got married. I'm going to be doing that again soon. I've been working the last 3 years. I'm glad that click list and curbside pickup is in vogue because I've been needing that for a very long time. The things I learned that I would want to pass on to you all is that, at least in home care, and I guess you could use this in any business, but my expectations are going to be met if I give enough information and then enough information is gathered. So it's just a two-way process. This is basic communication. And I'm proud to say that at Home Helpers, we recognize that there is a lack of information that has been gathered between getting a new client out of a hospital or rehab, or even just from being independent to needing help. So we have a transitional intake form. And that intake form gathers so much more information. It's the detail of what makes that person them. They're not just dementia. I am not just spinal cord injury. Just like all of us are different the way we're made, every disease process presents differently as well. So remember that caregivers are people too. They're nervous in your home. They don't feel comfortable with our lifestyle. Our family may be very different. Our food is very different. We make our scrambled eggs different. we need to always prepare for backups. I had to learn that. And then be prepared to educate. If you don't feel like you have those skills, then it's still upon you to ask for help. Reach out to somebody. I'm available anytime, whether you're going to use home helpers or not, if you need advice or just want to vent about situations with yourself or someone you know. But reaching out is key to getting what you need. And even for a nurse to be in the situation I was in. And if you get what you need, you're more likely to be accepting and appreciative of the care that someone is giving you. And it can actually be a really beneficial relationship. So I've talked a long time. In conclusion, I would just like to say that, again, reach out, ask me any questions, and that if you ever feel fear in a situation, it's because we need more information. Fear does not mean it's the end of the world. It just means more information is needed. And when you're recovering from something, you need to train for what you want to achieve and just keep working hard. That's what I do every single day. So thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
That was a great job, Barbara. And if anybody has a question, Barbara, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away. We probably have about 7 minutes left before we go into our breakout rooms and announcements.
Hey, Barbara, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
This is Tom Landon. Thanks, great job. What would your advice be as the first step to someone who, like yourself, faced an unplanned event in their life that was going to change them in a new direction forever? What's the first thing they need to do?
The first thing you need to do is reach out, and whether it's a church or someone you can talk to and trust, I would just don't stay at home or don't internalize and get depressed, because that is a killer. And you need to reach out to a nurse or clergy, someone you know who's also overcome something big, and you eat it like an elephant, one little piece at a time.
Barbara, I get the pleasure of working with you most days, so I'm blessed. But I have a question, about my family member. Unfortunately, he's not been as great of an advocate for himself as you have been. What advice do you give to those of us who see somebody in need, want to help, but efforts to reach out to them and to help have not been received, not that it's rejected, but just they're not communicating. What are they going through, or what can those of us do that feel helpless in that situation?
Well, I think we all have to remember that when you go through a catastrophic injury or illness, that you're going to go through the stages of grief. And a lot of times people just process that differently. And until they get to the point of acceptance, or they're still in denial, I don't think there's much you can do for anybody, Mary Lou, except supportive, loving care, like food, basic things that in your case you can do from afar, anything like that. If you can afford to sponsor a housekeeper for once a month, the practical things, so that when they are in a point where they're more accepting and they're able to be planning more, that they will reach out to you. It's hard.
Did you, Barbara, I missed in your introduction, are you working on a book or have you composed a book? Because that would be wonderful to give your story to someone going through something similar.
Well, I wrote a book as a memoir regarding breast cancer, and it's a very small, I use it as a book to give other women when they're going through treatment. I know that my story would be good to share, and maybe sometime I will work on it. It's just right now, I truly enjoy my work, and I love to paint. So the book may happen, but I do enjoy talking to people. I'm happy to share my story like this. So for now, that's what I'm doing.
Barbara, you have an amazing story and an amazing attitude, and I really applaud you for rising above what has happened to you and going out and helping other people. And one of the things that I got from that is something that may or may not be available, I don't even know, but a compendium of things that you can do, places you can go, resources, rather than having to go out and find all of those resources. Is there any place that has, like a book, or I guess books aren't in anymore, but a website that has a list of where you can go and what you can do for the things that you need?
As from the aspect of bringing someone home and how to get started, just
any aspect of what you need from going home to moving forward.
Well, that's a great question. I don't think there's any one place you can go. I think we've identified that in our business, that is a need that we're trying to fill, and much of what I've told you is non-medical, so you're not necessarily going to get that information from your doctor's office. It's really truly a transitional care situation. So I think that's an area that's underserved right now. You could go to a caregiver website, and maybe Mary Lou and I can research that and put that out there for you all to give practical suggestions for that. We can do that. I think Mary Lou and I can look and put that out there for you all.
That might be the book for you to write. Where to go to find everything that you need for.
Yeah, don't tell Mary Lou
stuff.
Don't listen, or she'll have me writing a book as an assignment.
I can tell that Mary Lou wasn't listening.
Barbara, this is Troy McDonald. I was really interested in when you hadn't seen somebody in a pretty good time, but they're going through some difficulties, either surgery or some cancer problems. And I heard that you're not supposed to say how you doing, how you feeling. What is your suggestion is how you approach somebody that has had some difficulties, and what do you say to them so you just don't bring up, well, how you doing, how you feeling, and let them have to relive that whole scenario again? I'd be interested in your comments. Thank you.
I think one of the most honest things that was said to me early on, and she didn't have the answer, and you would have to feel comfortable in saying this. She said, Barbara, I know you don't understand how there could be a purpose in this. And that, I've always remembered that. And then she just let me talk. And at the time there was no answer, but you know, we don't have an answer for what happens to us every day. I mean, anybody in this conversation can be in a hard, terrible accident today, and your life is changed forever. So rather than say, how are you doing, which you know they're doing awful, is just say, I'd really like to do anything I can to help, and I don't know why this had to happen with you. And that gives them the opportunity to talk.
So are you comfortable with saying, what can we do to help, Barbara?
Yes. What can we do to help?
Okay.
I want to help you. Let me, if they can't come up with something, have something already in your mind that you can easily do, you know, and offer that.
You know, Barbara, I just wanted to probably make more of a comment than a question, but you hear the old saying, when you get knocked off the horse, brush yourself off and climb back on. You literally did that over a period of years, tough years, I'm sure. And my niece and my sister-in-law just purchased a horse. And on a sidelight, she got scared because she got pinned between a stall and the horse at the age of 14 and literally had to fall on the ground. She was so frightened. These are massive animals and they weigh a lot and they do a lot of damage just in accident. But they do provide a wonderful outlet for a lot of people. There's an equestrian therapy group out in Collierville, and they actually work with people with disabilities utilizing equestrian teachings or experiences, and they do a lot of good. But I want to thank you so much for sharing your inspirational story. It's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Hi, Barbara.
Yeah.
This is Beverly. I have a friend online, distant, who her husband is on death's bed, and they're just waiting. And I don't know what to say to be supportive and just love her. But I want to know, what can I say to her to get her talking?
I would say something like, are you playing music for him?
Okay.
Do you think he hears you when you talk?
Okay.
Does he squeeze your hand at all? Things like that.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. If everybody can just clap, I know you can't hear everybody. But you see the claps?
Thank you.
What an inspirational story. And Barbara,
oh gosh,
Mary Lou, you want to have some closing words? Mary Lou, I know Mid-South Home Helpers brought Barbara, and she brings our speakers for health and wellness. Thank you, Lynn McDonald, for bringing our other speakers. But Mary Lou, will you take a moment and just have some closing comments before we go into our breakout business building groups?
Okay, well, one example of Barbara advocating for herself was we had connected, actually, I posted an opening on Facebook, and that's how Barbara and I connected several years ago. And my business is a lot smaller then. It's grown mainly because of the people I have around me, like Barbara and Tom and others, Arnitha. And and Julie and everybody. I know I feel like anyway, I'll skip that thought. But she met me in this tiny, I don't even think it was an office. I think it was a utility room that I was using for an office. And I offered her the job, and she said, I'll think about it and I'll get back to you. And she gave me the 2 days. And so she called me back and she said, I'm very interested. I want to come on board, but there's no way I'm going to work in this office. So I had to say, okay, I want this person to work with me. I'm going to go find another place to do business. And I did. And she came on board. So every week, almost every day, there's little things like that Barbara does that spurs change and growth and support. And it's just a privilege and a pleasure to work with her.